Hello and welcome to Kahali. We're back again. As you can see, I am actually abroad. It's early in the morning where I'm at. Actually, not that early. It's about 9:25 p.m. So again, there's feedback. So some things don't change no matter where I am. So that's a good thing. Oh gosh, can you hear me? Suhel's
Yeah.
here. Suhel, you can hear me. I don't know where the feedback is coming from as usual, but I have to clearly switch it off. Okay, it's off now. All right, we're good. Suhel, thanks. You're back after the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in London. Did you meet the Queen?
No, I was busy.
You were busy. How was it? How was the energy?
It was very good.
It was good fun, I could tell. Yeah. A lot of, hasn't got that much coverage in the US, I have to say. Uh, I
Because the
haven't seen
US
much of.
is busy killing each other with shootings, so they don't have time for all this.
Yeah, celebratory stuff. Yeah, quite scary. Over the last couple of days, there have been some three uh, three shootouts in the last 24, 36 hours. So it's actually just insanity. Oh, here we are. Sandip's joined in as well. Fantastic.
You,
So,
you
um,
underestimate us. We are people in demand. We have to run from one field to another.
And you're early. It's only 6:56. The time is 7 p.m.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
oh yeah, because I'm on a different time zone, as you all can
Yeah, but
see.
so what? You have an iPhone. Put it on India time.
Oh, I have actually my watch is on India time, so yeah,
Yeah.
that should work. But
Mm.
we were just I was sort of catching up on what's happening in India and the ferocity of the kind of around that TV show in which BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma participated about 10 days ago, and subsequently yesterday, from what I understand, is that she, along with another gentleman, was suspended from the party pending an inquiry, I guess that
Naveen
inquiry will
Jindal,
be.
not the Naveen Jindal. Suhel knows. This is a different Naveen Jindal. It's the name of the other person who was suspended.
I don't
Yeah,
know this Naveen Jindal.
he is.
That's
I think the media
he-
head for the Delhi BJP, from what I read.
that's right. But Times Now posted Naveen Jindal's the other Jindal's picture saying he has been suspended, and then today they retracted.
Oh no. So I mean, and then subsequently, the Middle Eastern countries, Qatar and Kuwait, as well as Iran, sent in, summoned the ambassadors to their in their respective countries and basically expressed their displeasure at the comments that were made on TV, and asked for a public apology, etc., in which the Indian ambassadors, of course, gave that public explanation that was asked of them. Now, this I wanted to chat with both of you because both of you have very strong marketing brand backgrounds. Suhail's, of course, been is a strategist and tracks brands very closely. Sandip has worked in the marketing field for decades and has a very had very close encounters with big brands, the way they position themselves, how they respond to the market and to public pressure and all of those other things. I think this makes for a classic case study of how public discourse in India can have far-reaching consequences, as well as sort of upset a very carefully calibrated diplomatic strategy which the Prime Minister has been following with the OIC countries for the last 8 years or so. Uh, Really strengthened relationships, uh, and reasonably so, because we have a large population of Indians who work in the Middle East as well, and has been welcomed, has won very high honors from their governments for personally. So this comes and also Sandeep, Vice President Venkaiah Naidu is in Qatar at the present time. So this also adds another layer to what's been going on. So here, let's just start with you and get a sense of how you're reading this particular situation.
See, enough has been said about the politics and what's happened. I mean, we all know what's happened and how we have been pressurized or not pressurized. I don't know those, and I don't even want to get there. I have repeatedly said, including on the Sunday Club on your program, that we need to keep religion out of public life. We
Mm-hmm.
need to keep religion where it belongs, which is private. You make comments, you pass comments, you pass them perhaps in the fitness of things because it's impromptu, it's in the heat of the moment, but their fallout is far graver than it is. See, I'm not worried about Qatar and Kuwait and Iran. I mean, it's a bit rich for these countries that are founded and formed on the basis of a single religion to then talk about secularism and all that kind of rubbish. My whole thing is that this is a very unfortunate state of events in our country. And I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
why. Shondeep and I both grew up, and I certainly did. I was born and raised in Calcutta. We never had issues where we discussed religion. Never. I cannot for the life of me, Advaita, remember when was the last time I asked someone, are you a Hindu? Are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim?
Yeah.
It came into our being. हमारे ज़हन में नहीं था. Why was it not
Mm-hmm.
there? Because frankly, we had more interesting things to talk about. We
Sure.
would talk about Dante, we would talk about Brecht, we would talk about Tagore, we would talk about cinema, we'd talk about Ray. We never talked about these things. Now, the problem is when you start talking about these things, everyone has an opinion. And when people have an opinion, as Narayan Murthy famously said, as long as you disagree, it's fine. But when you become disagreeable, it's not fine. So
Mm.
we take stands, we take positions, we create problems. Then we retract. Then it becomes to many people, oh, the party has let its people down, whichever party it may be.
Hmm.
And please remember one thing: every political party in India is guilty of this. To say that the BJP did this or the Congress did this or OAC does it, it's irrelevant for me. I don't belong to any political party. I don't care for them. My belief is that I, as an Indian, am proud of my civilizational legacy. Am I proud of the religion I belong to? I'm deeply proud.
Hmm.
But do I wear it on my sleeve? I don't. I've not been taught to do that. I've been taught that the relationship, the bond between my maker and me is private, it's sacrosanct, and no one should either comment on it or get into it. And if they comment, I'm not going to react for the simple reason you don't react to every person who baits you. Like I told you earlier,
Yeah.
see, the problem is there are a lot of unhappy people. There are a lot
Hmm.
of people who want to take what they call in our in Punjab a panga. So you're only satisfying them.
Hmm.
Dogs bark, the caravan moves on. You don't have to respond to every stupid comment because when you respond to a stupid comment, the chances are your response is you're going to be at least partially stupid because you have to factor in the context of that stupid comment.
Hmm. Hmm.
People
But
say, oh, but it's a rich thing, or like one person has said,
yeah.
is not rich enough to buy those books. Now, these are people who are stupid. Actually, these are the real stupid people because I have not read only books that are written by Western authors. Of course, this man, in addition to being stupid, is also deaf because I used the word Tagore. I talked about Dinkar on your program earlier.
Hmm.
So, point is, you can keep baiting. Now, see, this is a bait. Rich people. When you
But you
know,
did take the bait.
no, because I want to tell you how the bait is fashioned. The bait must not be through abuse, it must be through defeating their logic. What is logic? Logic is infallible. Logic tells you how to construct an argument based on fact. My point is that look, this is my belief. I'm not asking all of India to give up their religion publicly. You want to pray publicly, you want to do whatever you want to do it. But I'm saying this is not the India that we should have. I'll tell you why. Because please remember, India's place in the comedy of nations today is very good. You may disagree with Modi, you may agree with Modi. There is no denying that in the last 8 years, India's global standing has improved. India's ability to exert itself has improved. I, for one, I don't know what people say. I, for one, am a great believer that they handled Ukraine very well. Now, you
Yeah.
may agree with me, disagree with me. It's my opinion. If you're
Hmm.
on the show, you give your opinion. So, my belief is as follows: A, religion is private, it must remain thus. Two, there are laws in place in this country to tackle hate speech. Those laws must be enforced. Number three, the enforcement of the laws cannot be selective.
Yeah.
What will happen, Advaita, I'll tell you. Mark my words today. We are on the 6th of June 2022. Multiple FIRs will be filed against all these people. They'll be running helter skelter. Plus, there are fatwas, there are life threats. You're
Yeah,
endangering people's families. I mean,
yeah.
someone, God forbid it happens, someone gets hurt, there will be retaliation.
Hmm.
What are we
Hmm.
supposed to do? We are supposed to look at food on the table. We are supposed to look at development. We are supposed to look at the happiness quotient. We only look at the anger quotient and the rage quotient. That's my limited point.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, Sandeep, of course, you have been tracking this very closely. You've shared your comments and everything. Nupur was actually responding, wasn't she? She was reacting to something that had been said that she found offensive to her personal faith, and reacted with that in the way that she did, which I agree was offensive, no doubt. But it was also a reaction. So, what do you have to say about this sort of discourse that is there in our public life? You know, on TVs. I know personally, I've stepped back from a lot of television appearances because I just didn't want to be part of that kind of discourse.
See, Advaita, two things. Somebody making a social media comment or comment on your channel about something Suhel say or I say is one thing. Or even for that matter, what Suhel and I say here, we are saying in our private capacity, and people can lampoon us. But when you are going out, just like either a company spokesperson or a party spokesperson, there is a different, weight you are carrying and responsibility, and there will be consequences. So this fact needs to be known. And where I think, as Suhel said, it's across parties, and I don't know, a part of the blame I think also lies with the television channels because they try to get TRP out by letting people fight against each other on the inside the studios and get the temperatures up because that's what they think people audience is wanting to see. Uh, so you see the discourse. Can you imagine an Arun Jaitley on a show, even if this provocation was done? They were spokesperson at that point in time,
Yeah.
mind you. They were not senior ministers or anything. At that point in time, BJP had hardly any strength, or anybody from that time, a couple Sybil on the other side. These are just names I'm taking because this is recognizable. But anybody
Hmm.
else, or even if you move on in the subsequent period before 2014, whether a Nirmala Sitaraman or a Smriti Irani or a Piyush Goyal who used to speak, they would not be indulging in this sort of a discourse. So what's happening is these people are being led, just like in many other professions, untrained, unprepared, unguided into these things. They're being thrown into this thing, and they don't have the maturity to handle it. Our professor, my good friend Professor Sen, also commented on this, that these people just walk into areas where they have no knowledge. You walk into and then make a comment and get into this whole issue. So this is, I think, a lesson everybody must take on. Some of the other people on television, as you see, some of the other party spokesperson, they may not be speaking on religion, but whatever
Yeah.
subject they speak on, are, they get not only offensive, some of them get obnoxious.
No, look
And
at
that,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so Sandeep, the sort of language that is you know uh, used for the prime minister for years now, from everything, from his mother to everything is abused, and
so
it's just that this stuff just happens on TV, and we just brush it off. So we've been building the ground for this kind of an explosion
no, so
for a
tell,
very long time now,
yeah,
and
but what
I'm
I'll
saying
come there,
we. I'm not saying this
yeah,
side
yeah.
or that side.
Exactly. But what is happening also, even when I talked about 2014, when or before, when social media was very nascent and had not, the world has changed. Today, even if for a company, some company makes some faux pas and actual consumers may or may not know about it, but just the noise in social media, etc., makes them take corrective action, control damage, and do a lot of traceback. So the same thing today happens also in politics. So it might sound like a conspiracy theory. One of the grudge or complaint the ruling dispensation has is there is a coterie of people who are trying to paint India as Islamophobic and as if this whole religious freedom and all these things. And so they to some extent they try to ignore. So even 2 days back when Blinken made this statement, there was a very strong rejoinder from our MEA to his comment and saying, please look after your own business type of thing. Or even earlier when Jaishankar went to America, he said, we are concerned about human rights in America. So this has been a bit of the stand which we have been taking. And but unfortunately, even that's a very handful of people, they have been able to create that surround sound internationally to say everything is not. So Rahul Gandhi also goes and says that India is not a nice place. So here, without getting into conspiracy theory as I was beginning, you just see this comments were made on 10 days ago. But the actual strike happened when Venkaiah Naidu landed in
Was
Qatar.
yeah.
Okay. And then immediately everybody else, all the states, including Iran and then the OIC, everybody started issuing statements summoning including today, I believe the Taliban have summoned, though we don't have an envoy in Kabul, they've summoned an Indian envoy to talk to them. So it gets into that mode. And this is something which the ruling party has to be conscious about. So I tweeted yesterday, you may not have seen, I said, okay, it's a bit unfortunate. She's a young girl, over enthusiastic, perhaps, that she has been made an example out of this. But I hope it also teaches the government that they have to draw some circles around where or how they go and also give a mandate to people. I don't think is serving their purpose as well. The last bit, on the religion part of it, Suhel and I, or you, all of us come from a different background. We will not speak, but today, the religious polarization or whatever is a reality. To some extent, whether it's a mandir, masjid, this people will do, but that also can be done within limits in a manner with decorum, not by asking for people's heads or other things. And I'm saying again, it's not for one community. People will tell you that the Hardwar, the saint asked for a genocide, and here somebody else. So you don't have to really get there, and that is why the BJP will also have to rein in. And it's quite ridiculous if after this they have to call their own party spokesperson a fringe element, which is what the MEA has said, that this is a fringe element talking. You can't say you're a spokesperson a fringe element. What do you call the prime minister tomorrow?
But I think I think
ridiculous.
but Suhel, I think what they should have at least done, this fringe element was kind of absurd, but there is a government and then there is a party, right? And the
Exactly what
Congress
I
used to
said.
do this. Yeah. So the government spokesperson speaks about the government and its policies and things like that. And the party, which is in contest in multiple states and is working to a different plan, has its own kind of spokesperson. This thing, I think, this distinction when it comes to communication has to be also be made very clear by the Modi government
So
going
let me
forward.
tell you what I see. I'm not privy to this. I'm not Barkha who knows everything about the inner workings of the government. I will tell you what I see today from the outside. There is a clear agenda to shame India. It is not to shame only BJP or Hindus or Muslims. It is to shame India. Someone is working assiduously on that agenda. Our government has been terrible in handling that. I've said this on your program at least a dozen times, saying the communication of this government sucks big time. Number two, there is a distinction between the people of India and the Bharatiya Janata Party. Let's imagine the spokesperson of the BJP said something. If I were the MEA, my response would have been that it is the statement of a political party. It does not represent the views of the government and or of the people. By then calling your own people fringe element, you have walked right into the trap that these people may have set out for you, if it was a trap. I don't know. Number three, logically, what should have been said is, rather than you move away from people who are your spokespeople, because see, tomorrow no one will defend you. If the BJP thinks tomorrow people will go out of their way to, sacrifice life and limb, they are fooled. Please understand what happened to their own party cadres in Bengal after the election. They were butchered, they were killed. No one from the central leadership did anything about it. After a while, people say, यार इस पार्टी में रहने का मतलब ही क्या है? यहाँ तो कत्ले आम ही होगा. My view is as follows. There must be a code of conduct that must be followed by all, means the channels, the Press Council of India, if it still exists, the Advertising Standards Council of India so that you don't have stupid ads coming out. You
Yeah.
cannot have people inflaming this country, because this country has become like a tinderbox. People are waiting to set fire because they're jealous, they're envious. They're envious of the progress that India is making. As simple. If India was doddering or was a sub-Saharan country, no one would have bothered. Today, people are taking pot shots at us because we are recognized. We have a table on the in the comedy of nations right at the top, and people are envious. People outside are envious. I mean, Qatar, for God's sake, I don't want to get involved with, bashing countries, but the problem is that today we are in a situation where we don't know how to communicate and how to respond to an allegation or to a comment or to a criticism that is made. Number two, you never respond to a criticism with brutality. You always respond to it with fact. The fact is, and this is, let's imagine I were the government. I would have said the following: for every person across the world who thinks we are anti-Muslim,
Hmm.
triple talaq has happened, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. Number
Yeah.
two, Muslims before 2014 and Muslims after 2014, this is the GDP, this is their contribution, this is the role they're playing, blah, 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 blah. We don't do anything. We also stupidly pass some, ornate, archaic comment and try and brush it aside like a statement. Third,
Hmm.
what I would have done is I'd have gone parallelly, backtrack or channel 3 or whatever the hell those channels are called, and actually engage with people there, saying what you're seeing is a plan, it's an agenda. Now, if you don't do any of this and you publicly see, you cannot run diplomacy on Twitter. You cannot run diplomacy because 20 jokers on Twitter love you or hate you. That's not the way you can run a government. Now, you made a point about the prime minister and him being referred to in nasty terms. That, to my mind, is what I'm referring to. And people say, "Oh, y'all were rich, y'all are privileged, y'all have read English authors." The point I'm making is, it's not about how rich or how poor you are. It's about the sensibilities and the sensitivities you've been brought up with. You will not fall below a certain level. You cannot stoop to conquer. This is not a play. Now, countries know how to manage these things. I don't know why we don't, and why we don't manage them properly.
Yeah.
Today we are having a debate, Advaita, let me tell you, and it is causing an issue. I would be in denial if I said no. Across the world, people don't bother about this issue. People are bothering about this issue. No matter what the government might say, oh, to hell with New York Times, to hell with Washington Post, it does hurt them, and it hurts every Indian. Why should an
Hmm.
Indian be painted with the same brush? Every Indian. So that's my issue.
Hmm.
I'm no one to comment on what BJP doesn't do. It's their problem. It's an internal issue. But the fact is that you cannot bring a country down, and especially a country which does not have the ability to craftily defend itself. That, to my mind, is something that we need to look at or re-examine.
Hmm. Hmm. Sandeep, does this come from a sense of complacency? Because when it comes to domestically, there is no challenge at all to the BJP on a national level, and that challenge doesn't seem forthcoming in the near future either. Has this led to a sense of complacency wherein they know that they have the sort of popularity and the hold on the local populace, so they don't maybe need to pay as much attention as they should to this aspect?
I think, Advaita, more than complacency, it's also cluelessness. They don't understand the idiom of these things, and therefore they think, okay, we are like that only. So everybody, now that we are doing well, people need to accept us the way we are, and therefore the sophistication, that finesse, which maybe the prime minister has tried to cultivate, whichever way, it is not all pervasive within the why the BJP, even within his own cabinet and ministry. People are not really tuned to that sort of communication. What Suhel was saying about the jealousy, it is extremely apparent, and especially Suhel didn't mention. I think a lot of people, even in our country, are jealous about the relationship Mr. Modi has built with the Gulf nations. Okay, initially, I remember a lot of people sniping at him, saying that let's see if he ever visits the Gulf nation, when he
Yeah.
became this thing, he would never go to an Islamic country, and he proved them wrong. And developing such relationship, as somebody was mentioning, letting Saudi allow us to have air passage to Israel was unthinkable earlier. So all these things have happened. So a lot of people will try to scuttle that. Okay, and unfortunately, as Suhel says, that we are neither small enough like a sub-Saharan country to be ignored, nor large enough like China or France or anybody to be nobody will take the panga with. So the same Qatar doesn't, raise an eyebrow to whatever is happening in China with the Muslims, or
Yeah.
when in
Look at Qatar.
Afghanistan.
They got
No.
slammed repeatedly for 17 or maybe 18 weeks by the Sunday Times in London for their abysmal record on human rights. And it
Yeah.
had to do with their preparation for the World Cup soccer.
Correct.
It all
Correct.
disappeared. You know why? Because they are huge
Money.
investors in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So
Now,
they
we are
managed to
huge
do.
investors. We are huge
Yeah.
investors. We are huge clients. Why don't we have the gumption to take these people on?
So that's where again Suhail was mentioning about the communication track 2, track 3. I have said this even earlier. Our I've seen it firsthand, and all of you would have. Our embassies waste humongous amount of money in some bashes, PR, and all that. Instead of that, if they engage, say, local good lobbying or PR agencies to do this kind of image building, you can't, do course correction like some Australian newspaper wrote an editorial, and our embassy just issued a letter refuting it and published that letter in social media. That's not the way you
Yeah.
can change opinion of a newspaper, saying that your editorial is wrong. You have to work around the system. So these are, I think as things progress, this is something this government will have to pay attention to. So while we were all chest thumping after Mr. Jaishankar's speech in Europe in that conference, I think a
Yeah.
lot of that is today washed washed out totally after this whole
And,
episode.
and what's the point of making smart ass brownie points in a speech and everyone say, oh, dekho, our foreign minister is so powerful, so courageous. Foreign
And
policy is not about quips. Foreign policy is about strategy. Sometimes silence says more. We have Narasimha Rao as a great example of how he used silence to actually turn the wheels of the economy. You don't need to say a lot. Modi, Narendra Modi never responds or mostly doesn't respond or doesn't take press, questions or whatever. He doesn't need to. You don't need to engage on every issue here and pass some smart ass comments.
So today we have a situation where not just ordinary people everywhere. Advaita, your friend Abhijit, sitting wherever he is in Athens or this thing, he's making snide remark, quoting his April article, saying that I said so, that India's foreign policy is all balls and things like that. Sorry for the French, he's writing from that. So that is where you have come to.
Hmm. No, and I think the government will definitely need to recalibrate and think of what's happening. With the kind of the discourse in particular. I tweeted earlier today, and I said that why isn't the INB ministry? I mean, the INB ministry, to be fair, has issued warnings, etc., in the past, and said, to rein it down, don't get into this, don't do that. But the TRP wars are such. I think it's this deadly cocktail of TRPs plus social media hurrahs for clips that is creating the kind of discourse wherein I think it's damaging the nation, it's damaging the country, because it's not serving any larger purpose apart from temporary or transient purposes of getting more likes or retweets or what have you. Sahel, how much do you agree with this perspective of mine, that I think so much of it is being driven by a sense of self-aggrandizing, be it on the part of channels or participants or the commentary, that eventually the country is suffering?
I have to tell you, it's the way, again, the way you think, the way you're brought up, the knowledge reservoir you have. I have been on more television programs than most people have. I have never had recourse to abuse or use foul language or be intemperate. Yes, You can make the same point by being sarcastic, by using sarcasm or satire as a tenor. But I'm not saying everyone should. A,
Mhm.
B, I've always made it a point, if someone has abused, and there are lots both on social media and elsewhere, you just don't respond.
You
The moment
ignore, yeah.
you give them legitimacy. Number three, it's very important for all the political parties, as Shandip said, for them to actually get their spokespeople some level of training, some level of intellectual alignment. Because please understand, people are waiting for the BJP to fail, as every opposition will want to. People will want to take pot shots at you. Now, the other problem is everyone has started saying Godi media or liberal media. So now, if they don't get their way here, they will write to the New York Times or the Washington Post, say, see what's happening in India. So they will
Hmm.
transfer the responsibility or abrogate their rights here and transfer them there. My view is this government repeatedly has failed in its outreach and in its communication globally. I'm saying this repeatedly. I've said this earlier. I'm saying this now. Why has it failed? It has failed because of inherent arrogance and the belief that the MEA will do what it has to do. Our high commissioners and ambassadors are busy attending dinners for other Indians or looking after ministers and their families who visit them in summer or winter, depending on which time zone you're in. They're not doing serious work. They're neither engaging. I don't want to name names. I have introduced people to some of the most relevant, India loving senior editors, and I'm no one.
Hmm.
It's a fact that these people didn't even know them. Why did they not know them? Because they didn't want to engage. Why did they not want to engage? Because they're happier discussing samosa and chai within their own little hood. You've got to read. And I'll tell you something, it'll shock you. I genuinely believe that Pakistan has more lobbying potential
Oh
capability
yeah, oh yeah.
than us in the United States.
This is
Piddly little
true.
country with
Hmm.
nothing to talk about, but they have more influence in Washington, D.C. than we do. They have more
Mhm.
influence in the United Kingdom than we do. Today, the House of Tata is the largest employer in the United Kingdom. Today, Indians contribute the maximum to the GDP both of America and the United Kingdom if you look at ethnic communities. I mean, communities that are not
Hmm.
born and raised there. But we don't know how to grab our might. So, someone needs to pull back and say, okay, this is what's happening. Here is a calibrated agenda against India, inspired by the willingness or the desire for India to fail. How do we counter it?
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to use a borrowed knife to kill your enemy, like Sun Tzu said in The Art of War. But we don't do it.
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
add to what Suhel was saying. I would say, apart from arrogance, etc., it is also a lack of exposure. All said and done, the current crop of people have not been exposed that way to the international arena. If they have gone on foreign trips, etc., but then they would have gone, done a different kind of a trip, going to Disneyland or somewhere to go and look for Indian food. But it's not them, and also the diaspora whom they engage with is very different from the diaspora which Suhail is talking about, which Congress earlier engaged in. And, without shying away from taking names, say a network of a Sam Pitroda would be very different from the network of some BJP, counterpoint in the diaspora. Now, he has that access, whether in academia, whether in the, Washington circles, etc. So that gives you a different impact, and that is
And
what
leverage, yeah.
you leverage, and that's what see where you are sitting. Do you think any other BJP spokesperson would be sitting in your kind of a background in Manhattan and all that? It makes
No,
lot of difference,
No,
no,
I am too, I am too moderate. I
taking
am
off
too
from what
moderate.
Shandip said, okay,
Hmm.
go then. I'm going to give you a live example. April the 12th in New York, Tina Brown launched her latest book called The Palace Papers. I was the
Yeah.
only non white, I was the only person of color, only. So one gentleman from a global news channel comes up to me and says, oh, Modi is destroying India, blah, 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 blah. So I said, how? oh, Washington Post, New York Times. I said, but your own president threw New York Times out of White House, as Trump did. So he had no answer. Then I said, he has also your own presidents, both previous and the current one, don't trust the media. So why do you trust this media to say something about us? What did I do? I did nothing that was not expected of me. When I'm abroad, my country comes first. I will argue till death about why my country is good, why my country is doing the right thing. Yes, where the country has made mistakes, I will say why those mistakes are made and what course correction has happened. This is the leeway that spokespeople, people on television must allow the country to have. You must have maneuverability, the flexibility. You can't take positions from which you cannot never return.
Return. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my worry. And Sandip is right. You have to train these people as to what can be and what cannot be said. A, B, today we live in a world of remembrance. Everyone remembers everything because it's easy.
The internet never forgets,
No,
basically.
forget
Yeah.
internet. Today people have nothing else to do, so they remember the crappiest of things. And you see the ecosystem. The ecosystem will reverberate. It's an echo chamber which goes round and round in its own tunnel of despair. And that's my worry.
No, but see, Nupur Sharma was reacting to a comment. Now, she is a party spokesperson. She's answerable to her political party. They have set up an inquiry. They are going to follow a procedure with her. Fine. But what about the people who were making those comments that provoked her in the first place? This was a conversation, right? It was not a monologue.
See,
Now, have
Nupur,
those people have those people been banned from TV channels? Have those people had action taken against them? This was a dialogue. It was a conversation. It wasn't a monologue.
but as Shandip said, Nupur is an official or an
Correct.
official spokesperson.
So
So
she's
she's not saying,
she's facing the consequences.
no. In the sense, she's facing these consequences. If you go back to what I started the discussion with, there is a clear law for hate. Invoke the law. There is a
Yeah.
clear guideline by the Press Council of India or by the Advertising Standards Council of India. Invoke those. Please remember, you cannot have convenient laws. When someone says something, that person is forgiven, but someone else says something, that person is screwed. You can't have it like that, man.
But which is what is happening right now.
So it's
That
also
is what is
selective.
happening.
I was on another show where we had an ex-ambassador there. I think he was speaking very sensibly. He made 2 points. He said, first of all, Nupur Sharma's thing was played out, as a clip. If you saw it in context, you probably would have had a different view. Secondly, you see, even our MEA, they should also sense how the sentiment is building up there. And so if they preempted it by going and making informal contacts saying that this has happened in our country, but we didn't mean it this way, government is taking action against, the party is taking action against people, you could have preempted this situation of the envoy being officially called to be told. So these are a lot of minor nuances. I think if they really want to move into the big league which we are talking about, it will not come through photo ops or putting pictures of Mr. Modi leading the way on the staircase, etc. It has to be much more than that, much more substantial to make that.
I don't know if you're a great Bernard Shaw fan, Advaita, given your vast intellect, but
Yes.
when whales fight, shrimps are eaten. Please remember the target was not Nupur or is not Nupur. The target is Narendra Modi. The target is the BJP. Okay. So, to my mind, the only thing that needs to be addressed is how should this agenda or this narrative be handled, be addressed. And I'm continuing to warn you, you handle these narratives through the prism of religion, it never works. It has to be
It
handled.
won't. Yeah.
I don't know if Advaita you followed sitting the hilarious episode. I don't want to take names on television. One very senior lady journalist confused between two Nupur Sharmas and thinking this Nupur Sharma was the other one, started tweeting about her. The other Nupur Sharma jumped into the fray thinking it was her she was referring, and then it became a total slugfest. And in that thing, and it's really hit the bottom of the barrel. Now, if this is also happening, why should say, although this other Nupur Sharma of Op India, you may say is not purely a BJP thing or something, but why do you drag yourself into that? And then, somebody from the system should tell her that, cool off. If the other lady, for whatever her reason, she is going ballistic, you lay off. You don't get into that kind of, slanging match. So these are, I think, that is where the maturity or whatever you want to call comes in.
Mm. But one other thing that one has to ask at this point is then what happens? We're here, of course, talking about people who are officials, who have responsibilities, who are answerable to the government, to the to the party, what have you. But what about ordinary citizens? India does have free speech. There are people who will have things to say, and they may have things to say about anyone and
But
anything.
this is my worry.
Yeah.
We have come to a state in our country where even if you quote the scriptures, it'll be like quoting it to the devil or the devil quoting them. A, B. Please remember one thing. After this, no one will want to have a discussion on theology, even if they treat theology with gravitas or with seriousness. Number two,
Mm.
I haven't seen the clip, blah blah blah. All I'm saying, Advaita, is that this is a dark tunnel, dark hole
Mm.
which you're stepping into. The best thing is, given the way tempers are, given how irresponsible people are in terms of, either in the way they respond or the way they react, best is to stay away from this. भाई आप मेरे को बोलो, you are the BJP spokesperson or whatever spokesperson you are. There is so
Mm.
much of a track record that your political party has built up. Talk about that.
Yeah.
No, but to be fair, I don't know the context in which he was baited or not baited. Bottom
No,
line
no.
is,
I mean the issue is that
as
there
Sandip
is
said, the clip was taken out of context. Always happens. Which
and
only goes
and
to which only goes to prove my point, Sandip, that this is part of an agenda or a narrative. So
Absolutely.
if you know it's part of an agenda, then how stupid are you to fall prey to that? Then you should be even more careful. But
no,
think
she
about
got
it.
triggered. She
If I
she
know Advaita is going to, haul me over the coals, why will I willingly come on a show?
This is
no, no.
basic media training, Advaita, which all these people should go through. And there are professionals who can do very well media training of how to speak on television or how to
Mm.
speak, what to say, what not to say, how this can be twisted or not. We do it all the time in the corporate world. Suhel would have
I've
organized
I've
so many
I've gone
PRs.
through it when I worked in hospitality and the communications. I've gone through crisis media training. So I mean, those are things that you just have to handle. And we had a lot of issues. We had like a mass food poisoning that I handled. We had a gun violence in the bar that I handled with the media. So I mean, there are of course situations, and there is training for that, no doubt about that. But I'm also saying, shouldn't the INB ministry now step in and take charge a little bit of these kind of debates that take place, which
The moment
which
they
happen
do,
every other day? You've had people slapping each other,
no, but the moment
tossing
they do, you
water
all
at
will say
each
freedom
other.
of expression is under threat. But here it's the devil and the deep blue sea. Let's imagine tomorrow they put out a guideline. 20 people, whether liberal or illiberal, I don't care, they will say, oh, freedom of expression, India is under threat. That will start another debate. Today, you don't have to give guidelines, Advaita. I recommend channels need to hire good lawyers who need to tell them what the existing laws of this country are. Simple. There are laws in place against hate speech, against religious fanning of the flames. Invoke those laws. Once you teach a lesson to someone, people will withdraw. Otherwise, I'll tell you, it'll be the retaliation of the worst kind. You mark my words, you see how many people, how many FIRs will be filed now.
No, there are
And
already FIRs being filed. But see,
I don't,
remember a couple of weeks ago, you had the MP from TMC, Mahua Moitra. You had Sabah Naqvi, who's a very senior journalist, posting these memes about shivlings and things like that in the
ridiculous.
public domain, right? But okay, so they were trolled. They were kind of, their names brought up in discussions like this. But that was the extent of it, and I think that's fine. That should be the extent of it, right? But in this particular case, it's just gone to a whole other level.
There's a lot of stupidity also, Advaita. After the whole episode,
They shouldn't have suspended her. Not, I mean, I don't
no, no.
understand.
After that, Nupur was giving an interview to Op India where she was going on saying how everybody in the party is supporting her. Devendra Fadnavis called and said,
Called
"Beti,
her,
tum,
yeah.
we will look after you and all." And she was making those comments with great deal of pride and confidence. And then to be told fringe element and get suspended, it's a
So
very,
I'm trying
very.
to understand this suspension that Nupur has is basically till pending an inquiry, right? There will be an inquiry. She will have an opportunity to present her case to her party or whatever committee they set up. And Suhel is shaking his head. No,
By,
you
Nothing,
de-
think
by
this is a
definition,
done
that
deal?
is the case.
nothing will happen. I don't think. I don't know, but I don't think she'll be reinstated, because what these people fear the most is yet another whiplash or a backlash from the same people who they've given assurances to. Now, you tell me, how much egg will the MEA have on its face if, let's say, Nupur is reinstated? Then
Hmm.
what do they say? Oh, sorry, she was fringe, but now she has become regular. I mean,
Hmm.
that's my point. Positions of very hard positions have been taken, positions of no return. It's very difficult to then move around. This You have zero maneuverability left.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. Our viewers are asking me to comment on Farhan Akhtar's tweet, and they're sort of telling me, "Oh, you're from Bollywood, so you're not commenting on Farhan
Now, what has
Akhtar's
he said?
tweet." I don't know what he said, guys.
No,
You know,
he said a post apology is no apology, is what he has said. And
so,
so we are now digging out what his dad had said about MF Hussain and what he said or did not say in some other occasion. That's
Why don't you
what
write
was
more scripts that these guys get genuinely busy with what they're good at?
because they've been like going on for the last half an hour and saying she won't because she's from Bollywood, and I was like, what is this? What's going on, guys? I'm like totally a little out of things at the present time. I don't follow Farhan Akhtar. The only advice I have for him is please stop singing.
uh,
Stick to acting and directing. Just stop singing.
that he
That's
was
like,
told long ago by somebody I know from the music industry. When he wanted to
yeah.
start as a singer, he had told him that stop singing, and he was very happy when he did that film. He said, "Okay, at least he's followed my advice and gone into." But then he comes back to singing.
I know. That's my advice. That's what I want to say to him. Stop singing. Stick to acting and directing. And yeah, and I don't know what he said about this whole issue. Frankly, everybody has something to say about this issue. And at this point of time, I think what we have been saying for a long time and continue to repeat is that the government needs to have some sort of cogent response system in place. Secondly, it cannot be one rule for one person and another rule for another person. I think that's just unfair as far as I know, because a couple of weeks ago, a member of parliament was just as offensive about with Hindu sentiments, and nothing came of it. And now you have someone who has been offensive to Muslim sentiments. I don't deny that. I'm not even going to say that it was not offensive for people who follow that faith. It probably was, and the bottom line is that you have to have some sort of equality when it comes to reaction, response, and consequences.
But let's imagine there isn't. What will you do? Let's
Uh,
imagine.
there isn't.
It
So,
is the
so this
reality.
is this is the
Today,
reality.
today
Life is not
actually,
fair. Yeah.
but what has happened over the last 75 years of India's electoral narrative, the majority has been made to feel guilty about being the majority. The minority believes it has been persecuted by the majority. I mean, these are two roads that should never meet in the woods of Robert Frost, but they do. I mean, it's bizarre, it's illogical and ironic, but that's the narrative that is played out. Ki bhai, Hindus have got a far better deal. Hindus say no, we haven't, and
And
Muslims say, yeah, we have been persecuted.
the
And then
problem,
Muslims,
Advaita,
some
is
Muslims will also go to say, ki bhai, We stayed back in India. No one did anyone any favors, neither Hindus nor Muslims. See, point I'm making is this is not a debate that will end nicely for anyone. So best is to avoid discussing this. See, I can understand if we were discussing this in a country which had nothing else going for it. Today we have 100 unicorns. Today we have done remarkably well with COVID management. The development track, to my mind, is on par. Now, why do you want to? I've never understood this distraction, desire in our country to always take away from the real issues and then flag off the other issues.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And it all comes down to the same thing: not having a cogent communication strategy. That's all it comes down to, as always. And we can repeat this, over and over and over again.
Yeah, there has to be a
But
review overall, I think, at the highest level, Advaita, because there is another feeling which has set in that among the so-called, you would say, the majoritarian community, etc., that we have always been silent, therefore people have taken us for granted. So now we have to give it back to them in their own coin and that language, eye for an eye. But here is what you Taleb said, that this is a tyranny of the minority which you're facing. They will dictate your agenda, and you should not get into that game and start playing in their arena, and that's a no-win situation for you.
And you don't use, as Shandip said, you don't use tyranny to fight tyranny. You use logic to fight tyranny or the law. And it doesn't matter who has said it. There have been people who have made irresponsible statements against various prime ministers, including the current sitting prime minister. There have been people from within the BJP who have made irresponsible statements, from the Congress who have made it. Owaisi continues to do that. But there is no one wants to take cognizance legally. So I'm saying either we build our nation going ahead on the basis of laws which are equal and which handle this level of deviant behavior with the ferocity it deserves, or we kiss our nation goodbye in terms of this thing, because these distractions will be very, very dicey.
yeah, yeah. So Avi Singh wants to know if Bollywood producers have boycotted me. Avi, I have actually lost 2 projects in the last 18 months because so I lived through the discrimination. So that's okay. But I feel in the end hard work pays off, and that's what I'm going to continue doing. So that's to answer your question on that. But that's the other thing, right? It's hard to play victim also after a point. At least I can't.
Right. So shall we
Yeah.
wrap it up now?
I think we should. I think, have we crossed 1 hour? Because I really don't have any idea in terms of what time you're all at and what you're planning to do for the rest of the evening. But thank you so much for joining me. I think there are some valuable lessons to be learned about what's been happening. When will India show the alacrity of responding to things that are said about this country, about us in the West and in other parts of the world? And really, do we need to get a little more offended? Are we not offended enough? And that's my final question to both of you before we call it a night.
We are always offended, yeah. We are offended if someone jumps a traffic light.
But are we offended on the global scale?
I don't, I mean, if you ask me personally, it is not going to affect our standing in the long term. But in the short term, it's an unnecessary distraction, and it has been responded to in a very terrible manner. Our response has been terrible to this whole, issue. But, will people not consider India? Of course, they don't have a choice. I mean, look at China, yeah. The worst possible place on the planet in terms of human rights, in terms of suppression of minorities, blah, blah, blah. They get away because they manage their soft power. They spend tons of money. Our soft power is in inviting people for chai and samosa in the high commissions and in the goddamn embassies. We don't do serious diplomacy.
Absolutely. What's your press attaché doing? I mean, what's he doing?
No, whatever serious diplomacy we do is when Jay Shankar or someone, passes some comments and everyone says, "Dekho, what a strong foreign minister we have."
Whatever diplomacy they do, the people they wine and dine, they are the same people who go and write against them.
Correct.
It's
And
generally
they're stupid enough to think because they wine and dine them, they won't. But those people are also not meeting anyone else because they're only wining and dining with these people. So who else will they attack? I mean, it's a bizarre situation. It's a
you can get offended, Advaita, but the question is how you express your offense. That itself is a lesson. That how you can communicate your displeasure, and ultimately you have to keep your head down. If you go on maintaining your 9% growth, everybody is going to queue up in line, and then Saat Khun Maaf, nothing will be asked until
Seriously.
till that point. And so we need to all as a nation focus on that. And that's what even Mr. Modi said in Jaipur, but he has to make sure everybody else speaks the same language and thinks the same way as him. Otherwise, if there is a disconnect between what he says, Hatika Dant, and real, then there is a problem. So,
and we close out with that last comment from Manoj that Suhel has started to look like Harish Salve's brother. So
thank God they're not saying Meghna Desai's son.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back with more discussions, and keep us informed. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.